The Wall Street Journal's reported that nearly $700 million from One Malaysia Development, or 1MDB, was deposited into the Prime Minister Najib Razak's personal bank accounts. For his part, the Prime Minister denies any wrongdoing. But 1MDB already has its own problems. It is currently sinking under a debt load of $11.6 billion. And because of that, the credit ratings agency Fitch has threatened to slash the debt rating for the whole of Malaysia, not just the fund. Kamal Santamaria spoke to Wan Saiful Wan Jan, the chief executive of the Institute for Democracy and Economic Affairs, about the scandal and why there are calls for Prime Minister Najib Razak to resign over it. Here's that interview.
Mr. Wan, this is a very interesting story, and I want to start with the very simple idea of a Prime Minister who sets up a sovereign wealth fund. How did he come to be doing this? Because it's not the sort of thing we usually hear about Prime Ministers doing.
Yes, this is indeed a very unique situation, I would say, to put it nicely. Usually ministers and senior leaders of the government, they don't get directly involved in transactions like this. They will remain as board members or something that is formed officially by the government. But in the case of 1MDB, One Malaysia Development Berhad, Prime Minister Najib is seen as a very key player in setting up and running the organization. So it's a very weird situation, it's a very unique situation for the company. And I think this is the source of all the problems faced by the company as well as the Prime Minister today.
Right, so did he sort of set it up and then sort of stack it with people who are familiar with him and who are associates of him? I'm just wondering how much sort of attention this fund has garnered from financial regulators and commentators, etc.
Well, the Prime Minister himself is chairman of the advisory board. So if you look at the way the company describes itself, they will say that they have 3 layers of check and balance mechanism. One is, of course, the senior management team. Then they have the board of directors, the ones who are legally responsible for the company. Then they have the board of advisors. And the Prime Minister chairs the board of advisors. And this is where it gets a little bit unique, as I was saying just now, in terms of corporate governance, because usually the board of directors will not get too involved, but in this case, the perception, at least, is that the Prime Minister is heavily involved in the day-to-day running of the company.
Okay, so can you explain to me and to our viewers exactly the sort of trouble that the fund itself has gotten into? Because it's been around for 6 years, I think. What is the fund? And as I say, what trouble has it found itself in?
The purpose is for development investment, and they take a position in the market in the sense that they would invest in particular projects or companies and take a long-term view to benefit in the longer run. But so in theory, the business model is okay, but then when it comes to the actual operations, they are heavily dependent on debt. So they have accumulated more than 42 billion Malaysian ringgit, more than 10 billion US dollars in terms of debt to fund the operation of the companies. And this is the problem. It is heavily indebted, and people are beginning to ask, how will the company repay all those loans that it has taken? Will the Malaysian government have to bail out the company if the company does not succeed? And will that mean the taxpayers pay the ultimate cost if the company does not succeed? So the question started off simply because of the high amount of debt that this company have. And then it went on to a few other problems, such as allegations of misappropriation of funds, allegations of the funds being used, some of the money being channeled through subsidiary companies of 1MDB and ended up being used for campaign financing. All these allegations started coming up. And the latest one, of course, is what most people would have heard, that the money is allegedly put into the Prime Minister's personal bank account.
Right, and so there is going to be an investigation into that, and that of course goes back to one of my earlier questions, and that is, if a Prime Minister is so heavily involved and is actually the chairman of the advisory board, then how much faith can we actually have in this investigation process?
Well, I would separate this into 2 different things. Number 1 is the fact that there is an investigation ongoing, and number 2 is the fact that once the investigation concludes, the investigators would have to submit their report to the Attorney General, and the Attorney General has the powers to determine whether or not to charge anyone if there is any wrongdoing. The investigation itself is being run by a task force consisting of 4 people: the Inspector General of Police, or the Chief Police Officer of Malaysia, the Governor of Malaysian Central Bank, the Chief Commissioner of the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission, as well as the Attorney General. The investigation team, the task force, I think, is quite a good one. Of course, there are people trying to raise doubts about the credibility of this team, but generally speaking, I think they are credible individuals and they are credible team. The problem, however, is after the conclusion of this investigation, because ultimately, in reality, all 4 of them report to the Prime Minister. But ultimately, the report will be submitted to, the findings will be submitted to the Attorney General, and he is a political appointee, appointed by the Prime Minister to advise the Cabinet and the government on legal issues. He will have the powers, the complete discretion to decide whether or not to charge or to dismiss the allegation. And I think that will only raise even more questions in the future.
Just briefly, Mr. Wan, has a sitting Prime Minister in Malaysia ever been investigated in this manner?
I think that, well, there have been many allegations before, but not to the extent that a potentially criminal investigation is conducted. At the moment, there is no real statement from the officials whether this is a criminal investigation or not. But, everybody knows that this is about the potential or the alleged misappropriation of funds for the money from 1MDB eventually ending up in the personal bank account of the Prime Minister under his personal name. So there is a potential for criminal investigation, and this is the first time we're seeing such a thing in Malaysia.
It is a fascinating story, isn't it? And one that I hope we'll talk to you about again, Mr. Wan. Thank you for your time.